This week on Vaticano, we travel to Fatima, Portugal to discover the mystery of a shrine that attracts millions of pilgrims from all over the world every year. Stay with us for a walk through the city of the saintly shepherd children and learn about the apparitions of the Angel of Peace and of Mary. 100 years ago, the Virgin Mary predicted in detail the course of the 20th century and the attempted assassination of St. John Paul II. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. Portugal, Fatima. This shrine of the Holy Rosary is one of the largest and perhaps most famous Marian sanctuaries in the world. Every year, millions of people visit this site. Pilgrims come from all corners of the world, some of them with joy and others with sorrow, but all with a great devotion to the Virgin Mary. Tradition here has pilgrims walk on their knees across the square as far as the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary. A lot of them do it regardless of their age or social status. A prayerful atmosphere reigns all day here, and when evening comes, the air is infused with the sounds of hymns and the voices of prayer of the Rosary. There's a smell of incense and burning wax. There are hundreds of candles sacrificing themselves before God's grandeur, and every candle carries the prayer of the pilgrim who lit it. Those who have visited this place share wonderful impressions of quiet joy and peace. But what exactly makes this shrine so special, and why does it attract so many pilgrims? "100 years ago, the Virgin Mary appeared right here to 3 small children and entrusted 3 secrets to them. This is the exact location of the apparitions. It's marked by a marble pillar, which holds a statue of the Virgin Mary. These 3 children were Lucia Santos on the left, and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto. The Bishop of Fatima, Antonio Augusto dos Santos Marto, explains the nature of the Fatima messages.
Il messaggio di Fatima.
The message of Fatima refers to the greatest, most tragic events of the 20th century, the 2 world wars. These were something unheard of. It was the first time they happened, with their genocides, millions of innocent victims. Then also a message for the Church that was persecuted under atheist and totalitarian regimes, threatened to be destroyed and divided. So it was a message of grace, to say that God is with us, He doesn't leave us alone. The mercy of God has a higher limit than the power of evil, and also of peace. These 3 words are the gift Our Lady brings: grace, mercy, and peace.
Al potere devastante del male e di pace.
In a private apparition, these 3 children received important messages that referred to the whole world.
E la Madonna viene a cercare collaboratori.
The Madonna came to look for collaborators in the merciful design of God before the power of evil. So this is also relevant for the world today. Today there aren't so many persecutions of atheist regimes, but there's the danger of something, in my view, that's worse: religious indifference. To live as if God didn't exist, to live with your back to God. The sense of God is lost, and when one loses the sense of God, they also lose the sense of humanity. Because of this, the message is always relevant.
The message of Fatima is still relevant in our days, and the divine grace of this place is not exhausted. The millions of pilgrims who visit the place testify to this. And so do the many people who have received graces by appealing to Our Lady of Fatima. And you too, if you visit the shrine or consecrate yourself to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. We're in the small village of Aljustrel, about 100 miles from Lisbon, the capital city of Portugal. Today, Aljustrel is known all over the world and attracts thousands of pilgrims because of the story of 3 children who saw the Virgin Mary. It happened right here. Father Francisco Pereira, chaplain of the Shrine of Fatima, explains that before understanding the nature of the apparitions, it's important to go back to the Aljustrel of the early 20th century.
Aljustrel, it was 100 years ago, is a small hamlet in the parish of Fatima. And these 10-20 houses that have some families who live from the agriculture, from the sheep. And so these children went from profoundly Christian families, Catholic families, who prayed every day, who taught them to pray every day, taught them to be honest, not lie, to tell always the truth, to live the love to God and for the others.
At the beginning of the 20th century, Antonio dos Santos and Maria Rosa Ferreira, peasants of this hamlet, have a large family of 7 children, 6 girls and 1 boy. The dos Santos own some land in Cova da Iria and in other nearby villages such as Our Lady of Ortiga and Fatima. Today, there are few people around who still remember Aljustrel as it was at the beginning of the 20th century. Maria dos Años, 97 years old, is the granddaughter of Antonio and Maria dos Santos.
I've always lived here, but it was very different then. There was nothing. No highways, no cars, nothing. It was just woods. There were only sheep, some donkeys.
The smallest child in this family is Lucia. She's just turned 10 in this photo. Lucia's best friends were her cousins, Francisco and Jacinta. These 3 little friends are very different. Lucia is thoughtful, strong and direct, but of a surprisingly open nature. She likes to tell stories, especially from the Bible, that she hears from her mom and parish priest during Sunday school. And she repeats these stories to her best friends and the younger children of Aljustrel.
She would tell me that when she was here, she would play with the other kids, and that lots of kids would come play with her because their fathers went to work at the wine estates in the area and would leave their kids here because there was always someone in the house of Lucia's mother who would take care of them. Lucia and her brothers, but also the neighborhood kids. So lots of children would come here because their parents went to work and would leave them here so they could be taken care of. My mother was a weaver. She weaved all the time. My grandparents too would often go to the estates. There was always someone in the house to take care of the children. My grandmother was a teacher at Sunday school, and she taught other kids.
Lucia's best friends and cousins, Jacinta and Francisco, live nearby in this stone house. They are the youngest children of Manuel and Olimpia Marto. Jacinta is a lively, cheerful girl who loves singing and dancing. Francisco is a silent boy. Their parents raised them, teaching them how to love God and venerate the Blessed Virgin and the saints.
Eu sou uma sobrinha de Jacinta e Francisco.
I am the niece of Jacinta and Francisco. My father was Joao, the brother of Jacinta and Francisco. I enjoyed the happiness of being born in the same house in which Jacinta and Francisco were born. I lived with my grandparents because when my grandmother died, I was already 13. They both stressed the importance of loving God, the Virgin, and of a simple religious life.
Life in Aljustrel is not easy. The children have to help out the family from their early years. Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta put out the sheep to graze and, like other kids in these places, can't go to school. But they're not ignorant. For instance, Lucia receives Holy Communion at the age of 7, when 10 is the usual minimum age required. The parish priest makes an exception after testing Lucia's knowledge of the catechism. These 3 shepherd children have a big devotion to God and are normal children for their age and time. Here in Aljustrel, the path to sanctity of these 3 little shepherds of Fatima started. In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now. The small village of Aljustrel is the birthplace of the 3 little shepherds. Starting in Aljustrel, there's a path that Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco used to take to Cova da Iria to put out their flock to graze. Now it's become the Via Sacra, also known as the Hungarian Calvary. This way of the cross is a gift from Hungarian Catholics who escaped to Western Europe after the Soviet invasion of Hungary. Along this way, there's a place called Loca do Anjo. Here, the 3 little shepherds saw the angel for the first time. It was a spring day in 1916. Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco were out in the fields and their flock was grazing, when at noon it started to rain. The children took shelter under some overhanging rocks. Here, the 3 shepherds said a prayer. They ate their lunch and then began to play. Suddenly, a strong wind started to blow. The children looked out of the rocks and saw a strong light coming slowly towards them. It was an angel. He told the children that they should not fear him because he was an angel of peace. The angel of peace taught the little shepherds this simple prayer. My God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I ask pardon for those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you. A few months later, the angel appeared again, but in a place now called the Well of Arniero. The children were playing at the back of Lucia's garden when they saw the angel on top of the well. He said that they should pray for peace and for the safety of their country. This time, the angel called himself the guardian angel of Portugal. It was also here where Jacinta had a vision of the Holy Father crying and praying on his knees in a big house. After some weeks, the angel appeared to the children for the 3rd time, again at Loca do Anjo. He was holding the chalice and a host. The angel taught the children a new prayer and gave them communion. The angel was preparing the 3 small shepherds for their great encounter with the Virgin Mary. It was a beginning. May the 13th, 1917, in Cova de Iria, 3 children were tending their flock of sheep when they witnessed the supernatural apparition of a beautiful young lady. Almost 8 months had passed since the apparition of the angel. The children described the young lady as brighter than the sun, dressed in a white mantle edged with gold and holding a rosary in her hand. She asked the children to devote themselves to the Holy Trinity and to pray the rosary every day in order to bring peace to the world. The little shepherds understood that this woman was the Virgin Mary. She asked them to come to the same place on every 13th day of each month, which they did, thus totaling the number of apparitions to 6 between the months of May and October of the year 1917. The Virgin Mary also entrusted 3 secrets to the children. The first secret was a vision of hell and the suffering of sinners. The second secret was a prediction of the end of the Great War and the beginning of another unless people converted and repented. The Virgin Mary requested the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart. This secret was interpreted as a warning of the spreading of atheistic regimes, and indeed the communist revolution struck Russia on the same year as the apparitions. The third secret was a vision of the death of the Pope and of other religious figures. This latter secret was not disclosed to the public until the year 2000. It refers to the attempted murder of St. John Paul II. Later on, the Pope himself thanked Mary of Fatima for saving his life. The assassination attempt happened in Rome on May the 13th, 1981. Jacinta Pereiro Marto from Aljustrel, niece of Francisco and Jacinta, says that her father, João, was several times with his little siblings and cousin Lucia during the Marian apparitions.
O meu pai tinha 2 anos mais que Francisco.
My father was 2 years older than Francisco. My father had the honor of being there when the lady appeared at Valinos. This happened in August. After that, they had all been at the apparition in Villanova de Oren. My father was there but didn't see anything. There were only Francisco, Jacinta, and Lucia, and my father. But he said that, however much he opened his eyes, he couldn't see anything.
Lucia had a special role during the apparitions, as the Virgin spoke only to her.
He would say that he too wanted to see the Virgin, because when this apparition occurred, Jacinta wasn't there, but he was. And Lucia asked him to go get his sister, and he didn't want to, because he wanted to witness the apparition. But in the end, he did go look for Jacinta, and only when Jacinta arrived, then the lady appeared. But João didn't see anything, and they would ask him, "Why didn't you see anything?" And he'd say, "Well, how come Lucia saw, heard, and spoke? And Jacinta saw and heard, but Francisco saw but didn't either hear or speak. Well, I didn't see, didn't hear, and didn't speak either." He was always moved when he'd say this, because he had seen nothing.
Although they were accompanied by friends or siblings, only these 3 children saw the Virgin Mary during the apparitions. And during the last of them, the 3 little shepherds were surrounded by a crowd of 70,000 people who all saw the miracle of the sun.
No, my father, 11 years old at the time, would say, "I didn't go because everybody was saying that if the miracle did not happen, the whole family would die. And so he stayed home. He was afraid. And because he was afraid to die, he wasn't there when the miracle of the sun occurred. Just like he was at the apparition at Valinos, but nothing happened, he wasn't at the miracle of the sun. He was afraid he would die."
Soon after the apparitions, the Virgin Mary took to heaven her 2 smaller shepherds, just as she had promised them. Francisco Marto died at the age of 10 on April the 4th, 1919, and Jacinta died at the age of 9 in February of 1920. Lucia offered her life to the service of God and chose the consecrated life. She continued to report private visions throughout her life. Thanks for watching. Stick around for more on Vaticano. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. The apparitions of the Virgin Mary in Fatima ended in 1917 and gave new breath and hope to the Church and to the whole world, both about to face atheism, totalitarianism, and war. His Eminence Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone says that despite the personal nature of the apparitions, the message of Fatima touches on the political and international community. It's about Russia and Europe. It deals with the papacy and the persecution against Christians.
E nello stile di Dio, Dio sceglie I più deboli.
It's in God's style. God chooses the weakest, the most powerless in a certain sense, and makes them the receivers of a message to be communicated to mankind. So they too become responsible for the salvation of mankind. It all happens according to the words of the Gospel. When Jesus says, "I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children."
Dice Dio ha scelto ciò che è debole per confondere i forti.
The cause of canonization of the two shepherd children began in 1946. During the exhumation in 1935 and again in 1951, Jacinta's body was found incorrupt.
Io penso che è un dono della Madonna, la canonizzazione.
It's a gift from Our Lady, the holiness of children. It's one of the most beautiful fruits of the apparitions, because their entire path to sanctity they made with the Madonna when she asked them, "Do you want to offer yourselves to God in reparation for the sins of the world?" And when she said to Sister Lucia, "Don't be afraid, I will never leave you. My Immaculate Heart will be your refuge. It's the path that will lead you to God." So the Madonna guided the children, the shepherds, on this path of holiness.
The way to sainthood of Jacinta and Francisco was not easy. Portuguese Cardinal José Saraiva Martins oversaw the process that led to the beatification of the two shepherd children when he was prefect of the Vatican's Congregation for the Causes of Saints.
Both Jacinta's and Francisco's processes of beatification have gone through different stages, and they've also stumbled on many difficulties because not everybody agreed on whether the process should start first with Jacinta or vice versa. Why? Because the general idea was that children couldn't be beatified, as they didn't yet have the capacity for the exercise of heroic Christian virtues. The proof of heroism in the exercise of Christian virtues was the first requisite, actually the only requisite necessary for a person to be elevated to the state of blessed. Miracles can be exempted by a decree of the Pope, but the heroic exercise of Christian virtues cannot.
The mere fact that Jacinta and Francisco saw the Virgin Mary did not make them saints automatically, so the beatification process was suspended by Pope Pius XII.
Freemasons, who had a lot of influence in Portugal at the time, were trying to convince Jacinta and Francisco to say that they hadn't seen the Virgin Mary, that it was only their imagination and not a vision of the Virgin. If you don't say that it was all your imagination, you'll end up like Lucia. Lucia has been burnt with boiling hot oil because she said it was all true and not her imagination. If you don't say that it was all your imagination, you'll end up like her, that is burnt with boiling hot oil. Their answer shows their heroism. You can do whatever you want with us, but we cannot tell a lie, which means that they preferred death to telling a lie. And so I went ahead with the beatification process, and then, of course, we get to the year 2000, when the Pope beatified both in Fatima.
Sister Lucia was 93 years old when she participated in the Mass of beatification of her little friends and cousins. During the past consistory of cardinals on April the 20th, 2017, Pope Francis approved the canonizations of the two shepherds from Fatima.
They are not child martyrs because until a short time ago, children who weren't martyrs couldn't be canonized. These will be the first non-martyrs to be canonized, and the youngest too. One was 9, the other 10. They died at this age. So they are an example of the holiness of the people, accessible to everyone, to all ages, children, adults, men, women, teenagers, etc.